Hi there, my name is Christine Glover and I'm a USA Today best-selling author, but I wasn't always a published author or a USA Today best-selling author. I took 8 years to sell my first book, and during that time I learned my craft. I learned how to revise books. I learned that you should not fall in love with your first draft. I talked a little bit about that a few weeks ago. So just, decided to share with you my tips on revision, because you will get revision letters, whether or not it's from beta readers, critique partners, editors. I, for one, am very glad that my very first critique partner, Sharon Ray and Karen Johnson, who unfortunately is no longer with us, that they forced me to revise my first story that I worked on with them. We'd get together once a week and share our pages, and then after we got done, I was like, okay, great, ready to work on the next story. And they're like, nope, you need to revise this story. That first story underwent multiple revisions. It ended up being what I like to call my happy hooker book, because it won a lot of contests, it finaled in a lot of contests, it got my foot in the door with a lot of different publishing houses, particularly my dream publishing house, which was Harlequin. At the end of the day, that book did not have the wings to fly, but I learned a lot from that process. And in future years, I also learned a lot from working on other books and other revisions. I've rewritten entire books based on new things that I've learned. And the one thing I really feel very strongly about is, if you are too attached to what you've written, you're not going to be able to fix it for anyone. And I'm going to tell you right now, editors at publishing houses particularly don't like diva girls. I still remember getting my very first editorial letter from my very first editor at a publishing house, and I still remember thinking to myself, wow, I'm so glad I'm not afraid to do this, because there was a lot of work that still had to be done. So today I'm starting you off with it's going to be a little bit longer, because I'm going to share with you a workshop that I developed to present at various regional conferences and to local chapters when I used to be an RWA member. So I really think this might help you if you're in the first stages of writing, or even as you're moving along. Sometimes hearing something again over and over, even if you thought you knew it, or reading it again, helps you realize how to fix a problem in today's story, whether you've been writing 100 years or 100 stories, or it just doesn't matter where you are in the process. It's never too late to pick up something new, and it's never too late to revisit something and realize, oh, I forgot about that. That will help me. So this is for all levels of writers and authors alike. So this particular workshop, I called it Popcorn, Piece of Potential, Counting on Revision Now. I'm going to show you how to take that popcorn and make your story shine. I'm going to share some of my tips for that. So finishing a first draft is a lot like getting a bag of popcorn kernels that haven't been popped yet. You've got all these popcorn kernels, and they're all in there. They're all the elements of the story. They're the scenes, the chapters, the characters, the words, from beginning to end. You've done it. You've got all those lovely little kernels in there. But they're not ready yet for readers. They need to be heated, popped to perfection, so readers are ready to devour your final product and really want to make it strong, and really want to read it and read everything else that you've written, because they know you're going to put the effort into revision, to making your books the best books they can possibly be. So my first tip of the day is, don't fall in love with your first draft. Apply pressure to it to yield a great manuscript for submission or publication. I'm approaching this from two standpoints. Whether or not you're published doesn't matter to me. Whether you're indie, traditional, I think this can help in all levels. Your stories always do start with the characters and your ideas and your inspiration, and their first draft is the culmination of hours of work and plotting, pantsing, just moving through the story. And most first drafts are not clean. I can tell you, I'm also an editor on the side. It's my little side hustle. I'm actually quite good at revising and editing. I'm good at story content development. With Carmen Falcone, we run boot camp edits. I'll drop the link down in the description if you're interested in finding out more about that service I provide. I think we're pretty good, if I do say so myself. But at any rate, it's really through delving into the content and delving into the words that you really find out what needs to be done to fix the story. A revision is more than a simple grammar and spell check, although I really highly recommend doing one before you send your stuff to an editor, or whether it's a traditional editor, a critique partner, an independent editor such as myself, also doing that. We really appreciate it when our authors send us clean manuscripts and formatted properly manuscripts. You'd be surprised what we've seen. So basically, you're going to be working through more than grammar and spelling. You're going to be looking at content. You're going to be looking at character continuity, character development. You're going to be looking at the pacing, the whole shebang. Are the scenes working? The revisions start before you actually send the manuscript off. You first start with yourself. You want to maybe put your manuscript away for about a week after you finished it. Just let it sit in a drawer some way, let it percolate on its own. Work on another project, maybe work on some release stuff if you're indie published or traditional published, but just let it kind of percolate. Read some craft books if you have time. Not many people have time anymore. We all have a lot going on, but if you have time, do that. Then go through, I really recommend, and this is just me, go print out your manuscript. I seriously think it's one of the best things you can do. I know it's paper and we don't want to kill trees, but it's a lot different reading it on real paper than it is reading it on the computer screen. You can go through it super fast with a pencil. James Scott Bell has a really good book called Revision and Self-Editing, and he's got some little technique-y thing for how to mark up your manuscript. I don't really follow that, but I know what it is. But I think it's a really good idea to go through and just see where places are lagging, mark that, see where there's a lot of echo words. You'll be surprised. We all have our go-to words. And just take your time going through the manuscript page by page, and you'll see places that need help. You'll see words that are missing. You'll see thoughts that were completed. You'd be surprised what you find. You want to reread the key turning points. There's a lot of material out there online and in books about the turning points of any kind of novel. Romances have emotional turning points as well as, the pivotal plot points. Different people express them in different ways. Margie Lawson does things with self-editing. I think if you look at Michael Haig's the story structure video series, that's also really good. I'll drop a link to his website for you in the description. But basically, the turning points are like the most important for building tension and conflict. So look at your first quarter turning point and make sure it's really strong. Look at your midpoint. Make sure that you've got something built in there that shows the reader that these characters are getting ready to go all into this relationship, that they've reached that point of no return where they really do need to go. They're going forward. They're putting the past behind them. And then the next turning point probably is leading up to the black moment where everything goes to hell in a handbasket, whether it's a relationship falling apart for whatever reason, or the bad guys win, or you think they're going to win, and then that has to be shorn up, and then you've got your final resolution and maybe even an epilogue. I'm going to go into that in more detail later in a later series, but just be sure to be cognizant of that. And if you don't know what turning points are, drop me a comment and I will ask me for some resources, and I will be happy to share some good resources with you. And I'll also put some links in the description. There's some good sources for editing. I already mentioned Margie Lawson. She does a lot of deep editing workshops. She's fantastic. I learned a lot from her. And it's just muscle memory. James Scott Bell, again, any book that this man writes about writing, get it, get the hard copy version if you can, because he is phenomenal. You might want to get an awesome critique partner to help you work through this. Like I have two, so I'm super lucky, and one of them's an editor, so even better, you know? So like a beta reader could be helpful, and take those comments on the cuff. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to agree with everything. But if more than one person say this is a problem situation for them, then it's time to look at it and fix it. You know, don't be married to what you wrote. Be willing to do the work to get it better. Speaking of critique partners, I just want to quickly say critique partners, a bad critique partner is worse than no critique partner at all, or no beta reader at all, or no editor at all. A bad person is not going to improve your writing. And you can tell if someone's a good fit for you. You can maybe just exchange a few pages and see if the way they communicate is a way that you can accept, because it's tough. It's a trust relationship. And not only do I trust my critique partners to give me honest and real constructive criticism and point out the story flaws to me, I also trust them to tell me when it's good. I have to trust them. And if I don't trust them, then I won't change my words, because I won't believe what they're telling me to do. So really work hard on building those relationships. If you have an awesome critique partner, I'm really excited for you, because that's all the difference in the world. And quite frankly, I kind of like my critique partners to put a little LOL or a happy face in every once in a while to kind of help with the negative stuff that I have to fix. Say you are published, or you just got your very first editorial letter or critique. You're going to want to take some time to let that sink in. Like, don't dive into fixing the problem. You're going to want to let it percolate a little bit, you know, and it's the time is different for different people. It depends on deadlines, etc. But you definitely want to give yourself time to digest what we used to call the sandwich letter. Like, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. Oh, and by the way, you're still a really good writer, and here's what worked letter. It's the middle part of that letter that's hard to swallow sometimes. Some little tips I have for you. When in doubt, cut it out to make room for new words. Oftentimes it's just a simple matter of cutting. I just finished a revision, second pass for Dangerous Affair, the second book in the Crush series. I cut 40,000 words out of a 50,000 word book, people. And I rewrote the first 10 already. So that was painful. It was basically a massive rewrite. That isn't always the case for me, but in this case it was, because it's all very new for me, this type of writing. So I'm challenging myself and stretching the boundaries of what I'm doing. You can change POV. If it's not working in the guy's POV, or the first main character's POV, switch it to another person's point of view. Oftentimes that's the biggest and easiest fix you can do. Like, it just changes the dynamic of the story. The scene's right, but the person who's thinking in the scene isn't the right person. So it's usually the person that has the most to lose. So think about it in those terms, and we'll talk more about point of view, POV, in other videos. I'm really excited to share what little I know. It's, you know, I know a little about a lot of different things, and I hope that I can share them with you and lead you to places where you can learn even more. You can change narrative. If there's like long stretches of narrative, you can change that to action and dialogue. Like, you know, have them moving around a room. Don't have this static, you know, wool gathering stuff. Readers like to, especially romance readers, a lot of them like it to be a little quicker. They want the pacing to be bam, fast, and you want to have a lot of white space on the page. So that's something to consider when you're revising. I don't just do one pass. I sometimes have 4 or 5 passes, revision passes, and where I go deeper and deeper, where I fine tune it. And different people have different processes. So this is just my process. I'm a really rotten first draft writer. I mean, I just barf it out and I try to plot. I'm actually doing one story where I'm just doing it by the seat of my pants, just to kind of reignite my passion a little bit. Last year was a little bit hard for me, so this year I'm kind of having fun again. So, you know, you just want to For me personally, I find it better to just go through it again and again until I get to that final polish where I'm looking at echo phrases, echo words, overuse of certain words like it and that. That's lazy writing sometimes. Powering up my sentences. That's something Margie Lawson goes into a lot. So be sure to do that and go deeper and then just fine tune it and you'll be good to go. You need to also trust your ability to write fresh scenes in a book that you've already written. I had to do that with my very first book that I sold. I had to add scenes here and there. I had to broaden the scenes. I'm going to share a little bit more of that with you later. You're going to want to shake it up. You're going to want to consider cutting entire scenes. In my rebranding of the movie star's Red Hot Holiday Fling, the original version had a scene wherein the heroine actually had the greater growth arc, and there was a scene in there for her that I had written. It was my very first novella, another challenge, and the publisher decided, oh, you're only allowed to have 25,000 words, no more. And I was like within 800 words, 900 words over, and it was this part of this, it was this scene. And I asked my editor, well, will they take this? And she's like, no, you got to find something to cut. And I'd already sliced and diced about as much as I could, and I was a little bit miffed. So I went out, took out the garbage, walked around a little bit, came back in and just said, whatever, I'm cutting the scene. I wish it still was her journey, but that was just what the publishing house wanted to do, and I'm no diva. I just want to sell books and be a good little author girl. So I did what they asked me to do, and no regrets. I'm not going to put it back in the rebranding, but and that one will be coming out. I think in April. I have it scheduled to get rebooted and sent out into the world as the Red Hot Fling with some little changes to it. If you need an additional scene to the story and you don't want to write it directly into your document, because there's a lot of stuff with track changes and it can get very messy, if you will. If you know all those lines and you're building into like something that's a track change, if you're using a Word document, which I assume you would be in this world, it's messy. So I sometimes open up like just a separate document, write the scene there, and then I drop it in where I need to drop it in, and then I clean it up after I get it in there. If it's a massive rewrite, like the one I just did for Dangerous Affair, well, treat it like a new story. Don't get rid of your words. I reused on the back half of that revision. I was able to salvage a lot of what I had used. I just had to do the little tricks of changing POV and, reworking the scenes to reflect the changes I had already made, because they were global, what we call global fixes, not tiny fixes. So don't throw away your words. They can come in handy again. Trust me, they help me. My words definitely helped me on the back end of that revision, because I was pretty worried I wasn't going to get it fixed. So now, before I go on, I'm going to read you a couple of examples of revisions that I had to do based on editorial letters. So the first editorial letter I got, she didn't like the fact that one of my characters, Caleb, who ended up with a book of his own, The Marines' Red Hot Homecoming, was basically